My name's Jill Wright and I'm one of the directors at Kirk Newsholme. So Kirk Newsholme is an independent practice based in West Yorkshire, and we have a team of about 65 people now. The firm was set up about 30 years ago and I've been here for 29 years, so quite some time. We take on trainees every year. Sometimes it's been as few as 2, but this year it's going to be 9. So we're big supporters of the apprenticeship scheme too. The apprenticeship programmes have been really good for us actually, and many of our students really like the structure that brings. So right at the start of an apprentice starting with us, they will have the opportunity then to look and see what their programme looks like for the next year or 3 years, depending on the length of their programme. I think that's really helpful to those students, especially those that come straight from school. Those who perhaps haven't had as much time to mature as much and have been more used to a sort of more controlled environment. But I think in general they benefit from the structure. So when we're trying to assess what level and what particular programme an individual student should go on, we just consider the individual really. So we're a firm that's small enough to be able to look at each individual and their own particular needs and their backgrounds. It's really important when we're looking sometimes at school leavers and we're looking sometimes at graduates, but we're able to liaise with First Intuition, who are our main training provider. We're able to look at the individual route that's first suggested for them, and then we're able to talk to the students about their choice. We're also really fortunate in this area because we get a chance to meet with representatives from the AAT, from the ACCA and from the ACA, and all our students get an opportunity to meet with those people and then to be able to be sort of fully informed before they make their final decision. I think they get a number of benefits really. If I think back to when I first qualified as an accountant, that's what I could do. I could do accounts and I could pretty much do not a great deal else really. Whereas because of skills days and all the 20% off the job training etc. that our students get, by the time they're fully qualified they've got far more skills than I had at that stage. If I think about school leavers who join us perhaps at 18 and maybe become fully qualified at 23, their level of ability in terms of communicating with clients, managing teams, presenting things, is just way and above what the skills that I had. Our students benefit hugely, but I think as employers we obviously benefit from their increased skills. Obviously those skills come at a cost really, so we're really fortunate to be able to get some funding towards our students' training. I think if students do face challenges, the important thing is that they're well supported. So provided you've got a training provider that offers the support, then that's great. But inevitably, moving from university or particularly from school to a full-time role and studying and managing an apprentice file, for example, that is quite a lot for somebody to take on. But with the right support, they all cope absolutely fine. I've probably got 3 tips for an employer. First of all, find the right students. It's a hard market out there when you're recruiting at the moment, but don't take the wrong people on. If you think somebody's right, try and get them. If you don't think they're right, probably don't offer to them. So that would be my first point, make sure you find the right people. The second point is to find a right training provider and have really good communication and really good interaction with that training provider, because they're going to make a massive difference to the students' lives going forward and the flexibility that you can offer those students during their training. My third tip is get yourself an Amy. Honestly, I'd be absolutely lost without Amy, who helps me manage all of our trainees. She's probably the closest person who interacts with our training provider, and she's so knowledgeable about the trainees' routes individually. We're really fortunate because we're a relatively small firm, so we know all of the trainees individually, both myself and Amy, but she's absolutely invaluable. And the apprentice route is great in terms of arming people with additional skills, but it does take extra time from the employer, and therefore you need somebody who's going to support the trainees and the firm in that role. So get yourself an Amy. I think it really does actually, although I do think at the start it's probably really daunting for trainees to see their sort of life mapped out for the next year, 2 years, possibly 5 years is probably quite daunting. But I think having a structure there is really good. I also think it's important to know that should something happen, either personally for that trainee or maybe a problem with an exam or something, that structure can be changed. And again, working with a good training provider, you can look to see how you can flex that programme so that it best works for the trainee. We've worked with First Intuition for quite a few years now, and I think the big thing that stands out is the level of support that we get. And that's level of support to myself and to Amy in managing the trainees, but also the one-to-one support that all the trainees get. This has been particularly important if a trainee's had a problem, maybe a family issue or something, which has meant they've gone slightly off track. But FI have always been available to us to sort of look at maybe flexing the training programme, looking at alternatives. For example, if workload kicks in and it means that a trainee particularly wants to go back on a job for the second year in a row, and that time is particularly fixed but it clashes with a course, FI have been brilliant at looking at alternatives, i.e. different locations for the course or an online alternative. So the support is one of the main reasons that we choose FI. I certainly would, but I would also say, put time into the relationship. You've got to get to know the people at First Intuition, let the students get to know them and work with them, because the more you work with them, the more they'll be able to look to sort of provide flexible options for you and provide the best training options for each trainee individually. I think the other thing to do with your training provider is to get really involved in any additional things that they offer to you. So I've had some great experiences with FI, especially attending their forums, sometimes participating in their forums. So we did a great forum on International Women's Day, which was absolutely wonderful. And they've done a couple of really brilliant forums recently on talent retention and management, which have been phenomenal. It's been great to meet people from across the country who also use FI, but just great to be able to chat through things which are the day-to-day issues that we're all facing.